Hello listeners. In this episode I'm speaking with Helena, who was born in what used to be called Czechoslovakia, now known as Czechia or the Czech Republic. Now, migrants from Czechoslovakia have made quite a significant mark in Tasmania, most notably in the cheese-making and wine industries. Many Czechs joined the waves of Central and Eastern Europeans who migrated to Australia en masse in the 50s and 60s. Later on, many also migrated, fleeing communism. In 1989, Czechoslovakia divided into two parts, now known as Czechia or the Czech Republic and Slovakia. I hope you enjoy hearing a bit more about the challenges and experiences faced by an enterprising Czech migrant who left Czechoslovakia in the 1980s during a particular turbulent time in the country's history.
I was born in Czechoslovakia then, in a regional town which is about the size of Hobart, Hradec Králové, and it has about 120,000 people. So my mom was 19 then, and it was quite unusual at that time. And so I was mainly raised by my grandparents. So I've got very fond memories of living with my grandparents in a mountain area, in an old German farmhouse. It was Germans who left after the Second World War. And it was building without running water and electricity. So I've got fond memories of my father, lighting the gasoline light, and grandfather, and getting the water from the well, which was about 50 meters from the house and so on. But it was nice, different lifestyle.
How long were you living in that area?
On and off before I went to school. So primary school I started when I was 7 years old. And then I started to live with my mom in the city.
Okay. And how was the city life different from what you'd experienced before that?
Running water, warm water. Fridge.
Yeah.
I remember a little child really disliking. There was a once a week shopping. My grandfather would go to the village with backpack and would come home with meat and dairy products. And first couple of days that was great, but after that it started to smell and was not very tasty. So as a child I remember, moving back with my mom, having a really fridge and electricity and warm water and all the luxury of city living. And going to school, yeah. But my grandparents, they didn't live there permanently in the mountains. Okay. It was just over the summer. During winter, we were not there, so they were living in the city as well.
And so what period was that? Was that before or during the communist era?
That was during the communist era. I was born 1957, so it was under control of communists, so my grandfather, he suffered greatly, and he was sent to different jobs because during Second World War he was, or even before the war, he was working in jail as warden in jail.
Okay.
And so he continued the work when Germans arrived. They let him to work there. And the friends and my grandma, she said that he was always looking, after people who were in jail. But because he was still in contact with Germans, he, after the war finished, he just was sent to dig trenches and so on. So very hard jobs, physical jobs. So
okay.
He had several heart attacks and then he died quite early. Yeah. So I was growing up in knowing that communists were people to be aware of.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And so how was it going? What was school like at that time?
I have very good memories of going to primary school and high school. And towards the end of high school, we all knew that we have to comply with rules and that we had to be allowed by communists to study. So we had to do all the voluntary work on farms and working and helping and being seen as people who are allowed to study.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to study veterinary science. So we had to have many exams and references and so on. So and had to study hard to get to that. So I studied veterinary science. I did not have that much of influence by Communist Party then. I just knew that we all had to shush and obey.
Yeah, you had to kind of fall in line.
Yes, yeah.
Otherwise, bad things would happen.
Yes, yeah. But later on, after I finished study, I was working as a farm manager and then several things. It is amazing to see the links which influence your life.
Yeah.
And the intersections which really changed life completely. So at that point, my life changed completely because I was married. We had a son with my husband. We were working in a place which we really love. In that village where my grandparents' cottage was in mountains. Okay. And we were specialized in horse breeding. We had horses and it was really quite easy, nice life. Mm-hmm. We were getting on very well with the management and we could not understand why people would leave because there was, discussion about it, people leaving, escaping and so on. And we lived quite idyllic life in the mountains. And then we were getting on very well with our manager. And one day he offered us to buy a property. And that was a property which were, the state property.
Okay.
And it was old German farmhouse as well. And he said because we were good employees and he knew that we loved it there, would we like to buy it? Will come very cheaply. It would come just, for a few $100 if we can compare it now. Right. And basically given. And we really wanted to do that. We wanted to have own horses and we had, great plans for the future. So we were so happy. And he needed approval of the headquarters in Prague and approval of the Communist Party. And as he was driving to Prague, he had a car accident and got killed.
Oh.
And week after his funeral, the general manager from Prague arrived and he said that he understands that we were offered to buy the property, but he cannot give it proper, sell it to us. And he just the contract and that was it. Yeah. So then the other manager became in a manager of the one who was killed, was a really very strange man in strong communist party member. And he could see horses as luxury. Okay. And he said the horses have to go. And we said, okay, if horses have to go, we are going as well. So within couple weeks of changing this position, we were on a move and ended up in Tasmania, after many years. But that was, if that person who was actually, he was, of course, as all managers had to be in Communist Party, but there were some, I met really good people, but very very few of them, could survive being good people. So that started the journey. It's interesting, to see many, many years, because if we got the property, we would stay. If he did not get killed, we would stay.
Car accidents have changed the whole course of your life in a way.
That's right. So if you ask why I am here in Tasmania, I would say because my manager got killed in a car accident 40 years ago.
Wow. So I might ask you a bit more about the steps that happened after that to end up in Tasmania. So how did you go about leaving the Czechoslovakia? Because I guess movement was restricted at that time.
Yes, very much so. My husband was really connected. His family was many hundred years old farmers. So he was really connected to the land and he would not leave. And we found work again, which we really loved, with horses and in mountains on the other side of Republic. And we started to had really good results. We were given full flexibility to start breeding specific horses. And after a couple of years, we were quite successful. And we thought we, found our haven, in the mountains again. And some journalists came and did interview with us. And the interview went, into newspaper media. And a few days after, we got knock on our door, two members of Communist Party saying, well, you're doing very well, but we realized you are not in Communist, party members. You are not in Communist Party. So it does not work like that. You have to be, Communist Party members.
Right.
And we just laughed because we thought, we are having good results. We are in mountains. We've got no harm to done to anyone. And we're just focusing on horses. But it continued for several months to the point that they would be coming at night, 11 o'clock at night. Yeah. Two people knocking on the door saying, here it is, you sign this, and then threatening, it's easy, to remove you from the job. Your kids will not, we had two sons at the time, your boys will not get to study at all. You will lose your jobs, that was always, you will sweep, the footpath in a city somewhere. You will not be working with horses. You just have to sign. And that was, so blatant that, it gets to you after a few months. And I was crying and I was really, and then I said, I can't stand this. We just have to go. My husband was very reluctant. He did not want to go. But my auntie and uncle were in Tasmania. I was hoping that, we could connect with them, and then we did through other friends. So the steps were, we would not be able to leave. We had to sign. So we signed to become waiting members of the Communist Party. And we signed in February, I think it was February. And we said, okay, but we want to have a holiday in Croatia. And to have a holiday in Croatia, you had to have references or permission from your employer, from police, from your city council, and from neighbor. And we said, we want to go to have a holiday. We didn't have holiday, ever. We want to take our boys to see the sea. It had to be signed by manager, by CEO. There was forest company. And he was not signing it. We had to go and, get the holiday and booked. And so one day I went to his office and he was at the meeting and I said, it's really urgent. it's really urgent. And his secretary let me in, and he, in front of other 5 people, he said, of course, I'll sign it, but, hopefully you are not going to escape, ha, ha, ha. And I said, of course, we've got the horses, family here. And then my husband had to go and sleep overnight on the street to get in the office, because there was just one travel agency office close, and everyone who wanted to go overseas had to queue there for a long time. With all the paperwork and the references, he went there. He slept on a path. With other people. So we got in. And when we got in, they were able to give us or provide permission, to leave the Republic. But we had to apply for visa, that we are going to have. We are going on holiday. So we applied for, the police, and we didn't get visa. We did not get permission to take our youngest son with us. So we got permission, 2 of us, taking our oldest son, which he was 5 years old. But the youngest one had to stay home. And that was as a warranty that we would come back. That was, usual way how it was done before. So we had problem on our hands. We would not talk about our plan to escape unless it was late at night in a bathroom with running water in bathtub. Right. So we were so hyper vigilant about that someone would listen to us. And we knew that our neighbor, who was living a few hundred meters away from us, was police informer. And we were so afraid that if, someone would say, a word, we would not be able to go. So we planned. So no one knew. And we decided that I will ask my best friend to go to apply for holiday in Croatia as well. So I went to see her, and I said that we want to leave. We want to go to Tasmania, and would she be willing, if we buy holiday for her, would she be willing to go and apply for visa? So she would go with her daughter, oldest daughter, and our son. And her husband and her oldest son, younger son, would stay at home, so it would not be any problem. So she did, and she got the visa for our younger son. We had, the form, which was just a piece of paper saying that he's allowed to travel to Croatia. He was 4 years old. No one had to know. We were just acting as normal, that we are going just for a couple of weeks to Croatia to have a holiday. None of our family knew. No one really knew. It was so difficult to see my parents for the last time, about a week before we went. So, we packed a couple of suitcases and sat in car and drove off.
Because at that time, I guess you wouldn't know that you may never be able to come back to Czechoslovakia.
Yeah. I think we were so focused and so desperate to leave because we wanted a better future for our boys. We left everything behind, everything except, 2 suitcases. At the borders, we were stopped. And then we thought that maybe they were just trying to look for something to stop us. They were definitely suspicious. And if it was because we were one of the first going across the border, 18th of May, 1985.
Okay.
And because we wanted to go, ASAP, just go. So that was the first day when people were allowed to leave Republic for holiday. Okay.
So you got in early.
Yes, yeah. So on the border they were searching. They took seats from the car, undid the doors, took everything from our suitcases, and they were looking at anything which could prove that, we want to escape.
Mm.
When we were leaving, I just wanted to leave the house completely neutral, nothing personal. So I burned every personal item.
Oh, wow.
I burned. That was like hotel accommodation. And I went through every book, shook the book so there wouldn't be notes or photographs. And I put aside a couple books which I wanted to take with me. And one book, I still have it, is called, it was Czech book, You Will Not Escape Your Punishment, okay? Was the, criminal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And on the border, when they were searching, they took the book and shook it, and there was a piece of paper with address of my auntie in Hobart.
Oh.
And I nearly got a heart attack, but I had to pretend everything is fine. And they picked it up, look at that, and put it back, in the book. And then they locked us in a room. And I with everything. And I had that feel of doing something, just taking it and eating it or, something. And I just thought, no, I just have to leave it. And after about half an hour, the officers came back, and first they went for the book, and they opened the book and found a note. Mm. And I was thinking about what would I say if I ate the note. And they would be looking for it. So they knew, and they were asking why, what's the note? And I said, it's just, address of my auntie who lives overseas, and I can't remember her address, so I just wrote the address in a note, and because there were no mobile phones with notes and anything, so that was quite harassing, and we were there for hours, and they let us go. Eventually, they went twice through everything, and they let us go. And I could not stop crying for hours, and I just could not. It was probably the most stressful situation in my whole life, just to stay there, because they could stop us and put us in jail. And
your whole life is sort of hanging in the balance at that moment.
Yes. Yeah, so we went straight to Croatia, and we went to UN embassy, and they said that we have to go to Austria. So we went to Austrian embassy, and they provide us with travel visa, transit visa to Austria, and they told us that we have to go and apply for refugee visa in Traiskirchen, which is suburb of Vienna. So we had to get to Vienna, so go over the mountains. So we arrived to Traiskirchen. We went to the camp. It was just a normal process. It was like locked in a jail for 3 weeks, and it was very stressful because we were locked with other 45 people, 4 level bunk beds, female, male, kids, one huge room, and without toilet and bathroom. Yeah, right. So you had to knock on a door if you needed to use anything. So, and then families with children were transferred to hostels in country. So from then, after 3 weeks, when they checked our status, they had to find out if we are not spies or, criminals. We were transported to a hostel, which was like a little hostel in a mountain area. There were families, all of them Czechs and Slovaks, with kids, with children. And there we were waiting for a time when we were allowed to travel to the destination.
And so when did you find out that you were accepted to come to Australia?
It was, I think, about 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
It was a long time, and we yeah, it was quite stressful as well because we were still scared that, someone could come and put us on truck and take us over the border back to Czechoslovakia. And then we got visa to travel. And we were, flight tickets were paid by some charity and we had to repay them back.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we were paying about $10 a week for a couple of years. We arrived to Hobart on 21st of December, 1995.
Just before Christmas.
That's right, yes.
Okay, you had a good time.
And we were expecting that it's really hot. And my auntie and uncle had the wood heater going because we were cold.
So what were your first impressions of Tasmania then?
Home. It was incredible. I still feel very emotional when I think about it. Leaving, I didn't feel like home in Czechoslovakia. I felt we were pushed and it was not, the nest. It was somewhere where I was born, but did not feel safe.
Yeah.
And then in Austria, it was stressful and quite traumatic. With, other people, things were happening, a lot of different stories and so on. So coming here, it was like coming home.
Yeah, right.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it easy to settle in or challenging? And what were some of the more challenging things?
The language.
Yep.
It was challenging because my auntie and uncle, they are not rich people, and they had kids at that time, 3-bedroom house and 2 kids. So 8 people in 3-bedroom house was not easy, and we understood that we had to move out. So we moved in with their friend and lived with her for a couple of months, and then we rented privately. And my uncle, helped us to apply. At that time, we had the unemployment benefit straight away, and the, enrollment in the adult migrant education classes, learning English. So that was our focus for half a year. But it was very difficult not knowing the language, even though we were trying, to learn. We went to classes in Austria.
Okay.
But it was, very inadequate. And here we felt removed from world and from what is happening around us. We didn't know anyone here than auntie and uncle, and could not understand, media, newspaper, radio, TV, nothing. It was very difficult, yeah. And finding the food, the supermarket, we did not have supermarkets, like this in Czechoslovakia. So you did not have choice. You were just standing in a long queue line, and when it was your turn, there was a person behind counter and who would give you one of this.
Yeah.
And suddenly, coming to supermarket and so many choices and not really knowing what is for people and for pets.
Yeah,
so
right.
We ended up eating dog salami.
Oh, really?
Yeah. My husband at the time, he was very depressed about not having job and not having income. So we would buy, very, very cheap, broken furniture, second-hand shops, and he would fix it, and then we would use it and for many, many years. And so the challenge is that the most important was the language.
Yeah.
And a different, that democracy and freedom, although feeling very restricted because of the language and not understanding the system and being scared of police. You know, seeing police, my heart would race for many, many years when I saw police car or police walking in the street. So it took many years to get used to it. And then we started to feel homesick for, friends and family and places we knew. So it was interesting. It was, probably after a couple of years when we felt, complete relief from being here in a safe place. It was changed for wanting to go and visit friends and family again. So after 89, when was the Velvet Revolution, we just wanted to go back and visit, see, not permanently, but just we wanted to go back and travel again. In the beginning, that, isolation and getting used to living on very little income, but we were always so grateful, always. And compare Tasmanians compared to Austrians, the Tasmanians were always so friendly and helpful and comforting when things were not working well. Compared to Austrians, they did not like having migrants there, and they were showing the dislike very much so, and openly.
After sort of those challenges, when was the point where you started to feel more comfortable, and what sort of contributed to that?
Having work, definitely. And we were hoping that we will be able to work with horses again. But we applied for a few jobs, but we found that the horse farms were owned by family, and the horses, the husbandry here was so different to Europe, because the horses were, in paddocks, not in stables most of the time. So there was not need for people, to be employed. And just we applied for a few jobs but didn't get any. So then through to a friend we met, we were offered a job on a pig farm in piggery.
All right.
So we moved to, it was about 25 kilometers away from Hobart. And we were offered, or my husband got offered the job there. So we were very happy. So we were offered accommodation. And in hindsight now, looking at that, we were getting $230 a week. My husband was getting, the salary. We were paying $140 at that time rent for the house. And the farmer was getting $220 as a subsidy from government to employ us. But we were so happy. And they said that later on, they could offer me job as well, but I have to, help my husband and prove that I can learn. So for 6 months, we were basically running the farm, and I was working there for free. But I was very grateful. I was really happy that I could work and help my husband. And then, I said, we really need more, income. We need something, way for our boys, because everything was very restricted. And I said, I reminded at that time, it was after we got the job after 6 months, we could communicate in English. After about 1 year when we were in Tasmania, I said to the farmers, I really need to work, I need to have income, so can I, be employed? You said, you will employ me. And they said, well, it's not as it looks like, and we are not in the situation to employ another person, and so we can't employ you now. So I said, okay, so we have to find work in a city. We knew we had to move from the farm, and we were looking at renting, houses. And my husband still had to work full-time on the farm, and I was looking at properties, and I realized that we would actually need to pay less if we purchased a property than renting property, because at that time government was providing subsidy for new homeowners.
Okay.
So we got, that as we could put it as a deposit for the mortgage. So we bought our first house after just about 15 months in Tasmania. We paid $35,000 for it.
Wow.
And we moved from the farm to Hobart, to Claremont. So my husband got work at Morilla in winery, and I got job in Cadbury's. So
right.
I was working for about half a year in Cadbury's. So both of us were working. Boys went to Claremont primary school. So the life settled then.
Yeah. You've had lots of jobs in Tasmania. And what did you end up doing eventually, sort of longer term?
Longest term was probably the community services. The most exciting was having own restaurant.
Okay.
Most diverse was the Cadbury's and piggery, going from the piggery to chocolate factory.
So you've been back to the Czech Republic. What were some of the main differences that you noticed on returning there after so many years?
Well, the democracy has two faces, many faces. And I'm so grateful that I am in the system which has a history and which is well embedded in society. Because, going back there, people use the freedom in a very opportunistic ways.
Okay.
And it will take time. I think it's, after, 21 years now, it's getting better, but it still will take probably decade until, it settles in. And awful stuff, there. And I felt very unsafe in Europe, very unsafe. The system overall, it's even though it is called, democratic system, it's so different and so corrupted. It is incredible, openly corrupted. The people who's got money can buy the justice system openly. People who were very enthusiastic and happy about the change, which would have been fantastic period for, first probably year or so, now are bitter and disillusioned. The living standards compared to they were communists. Now it's worse than it was before. So people are very disillusioned. The younger generation who's got education now and speaks several languages and has networking and connection and travels a lot, they are fantastic. There are and will be changes, but the older generation and people who grew up under communist regime, they suffer badly.
I was going to ask a few questions about Czech culture versus Australian culture. What were some of the biggest differences that you noticed or experienced when you came to Australia compared to what you were used to in Czechoslovakia?
Well, the one thing was, the socializing. So there is no unexpected visitors invited. And people are only invited, and you have to announce you're here.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, okay. In the Czech Republic, you could drop in to anyone's houses any time of the day or night, and unless it's probably up to midnight, it's still okay. It changed now as well, but before we left Czechoslovakia, it was normal that friends would drop in and you would drop everything and sit with them and offer them and invite them to have meal. That, would be normal, that if friends would come, you would feed them, you would give them your bedroom, and you would sleep on couch.
Okay.
And here it was strange that you would not visit people without arranging with them the time when you would come, and also, you would not be offered meal or food, if you would come. And also, polite would be to bring something. In Czech Republic, it would be rude if you bring something with you. Mm-hmm. It would be like, you don't want my food? Eastern European families, they are very close-knitted. Mm-hmm. And we always were saying that the one child is raised by a whole village, mm-hmm. because there are aunties and uncles, and everyone knows everyone, and people, neighbors know each other very, closely. And here I was surprised that at that time, now it's a bit different, the children are leaving, when they are 16, they can find own accommodation, and that grandparents and parents don't, very often don't live together, which was very often, custom in Czechoslovakia, or at least they were living close, very close, and children always looked after their older, elderly parents. So, so that, the families were not in contact that often, and not, mm-hmm. Living close as we used to live. So that was a bit strange for me. Also, when we were going to the adult migrant English service, we would compare, the situation with other people who arrived. And they were not only from East Europe, but also from Asia, from Vietnam at the time, and so on. And we all had one very strange things happening, and the same. Everyone had it. Dreams, right. Waking up in the country of origin and being really, really scared that it's back again and cannot leave.
Yeah, right.
And we compared every single person who was, in a classroom after we were able to communicate somehow, had the same dream. Just waking up, for me it was waking up in Czechoslovakia and realizing that I am there, and my family is in Tasmania, and I can't escape.
So in Australia, of course, it's really common for people to say to strangers, how are you doing, that kind of thing. But from what I gather, in the Czech Republic, that's not really what you do. Is that right?
We wouldn't say, how are you? If we, met someone on the street, we would say, how is your family, or how is your son, or how is, remember, we, asking, how are you? It just would not happen. And it's funny, we were saying that we would hear that, funny behavior that people ask, and how are you? And I would say, I'm having a really awful day. Mm-hmm. Or I would say, I'm having a shitty day. And the other person would say, oh, that's good to hear, good to hear. Because people really don't want answer. There are different little things in behavior. Here, especially when you walk in the morning somewhere and around neighborhood, and you smile at people, and sometimes even, around Hobart, you go, you smile at people, and people smile back to you. In Czech Republic, I was pulled over by my mom and saying, please don't smile at everyone. People people think that there's something wrong with you, you go on, around. I would walk their dog and I would smile and say good morning and what's wrong, Does she want something from me? Yeah.